I mean, you had to know that this was going to be the next thing, right? Good morning, everyone. I'm looking through Mom's eyes at the world, and oh my goodness, what a crazy place it is. All right, good morning. Hello, how are you? I have to uh, connect the other screen, so just give me 2 seconds while I do that, while I reach over here and click on this other screen. I'm actually getting quite good at this. I mean, I don't want to brag. But hang on. Now, here we go. I click on this. I look like a mad thing. I look like a mad thing in those glasses. All right. There it is. We're live. Okay. So, if the world is going to gradually get past this current moment that we're in, there's every likelihood that I will be attending a live event this spring, one of those fan events, and I thought it would be really great, really fun to have these sunglasses, to have these crazy props, either the glamorous Abby or the mom, because they're fun. And by the way, you can actually see through them. Who da thunk it? So that's the lighter note on what is happening today. I had already decided because I'm closing in. We're closing in on this whole pivot concept. That you don't have to start over, you don't have to go back to zero, you don't have to become anything. This is not about change. We survive and thrive because we are uniquely able to pivot when we need to. It is part of our survival mechanism. It's how we've been wired since time began. The reason we don't do it as often as we can is because we don't realize it. We aren't aware. And the reason we're not aware is because the part of our brain that does the most pivoting all the time is one we don't even realize is operating on our behalf. So that's the, I guess, the foundation that I'm starting with. It's my here we are. You know that thing on the map, you are here? Yeah. That's where this whole conversation is beginning. That we have the ability to do so much more than we realize if we can give ourselves permission to consider that as true. The possibilities are endless for us. Really, we can do almost anything we consciously and unconsciously set our minds to, after we clear up a few errors in what we're thinking. I'm sorry, I'm leaning in, and I know that makes everything look weird, but I just need to fix that one thing. All right, so it's Thursday. It is the 24th of February, 2002. And while we have all been doing whatever it is that we do, we have probably not noticed that some unfortunate things were unfolding. And now we wake up this morning with the news that there's a war that wasn't happening before. And a war anywhere, between any group, has a ripple effect. You get a pond with assorted things going on. You take a fairly sizable stone, and you hold the stone up at your shoulders. Good morning, Daniel. And you drop the stone in the pond. And the stone, when it hits the water, goes sploosh. There's droplets everywhere. There's a great crater for a second, and after that settles, there are ripple effects. If it's a really big pond and there are ships on it, boats on it, people, animals, everybody's normal events, normal daily plans and actions are affected until the ripples subside. And the ripples take a long time to subside. This is true. You can prove it to yourself as soon as the weather starts to cooperate and everything isn't frozen and it isn't minus degrees. You can go get a stone, find a pond, drop the stone, and say, oh, look at that. There she is. Good morning, Jeremy. For those of you who are joining me, today I'm talking about pivoting in response to. Pivoting because things are fluid and changing all the time. Pivoting because we have the tools and because we can. So it's the will, as Chad Hill says, you got to have the will and the want. So when we can see a thing we don't approve of, don't like, isn't our cup of tea, we have options. If we don't know that we have options, we shrug our shoulders and say, oh well. If we do have options and we know how to use them, we have the ability and the freedom to say, you know what, check please, and not participate. A couple of days ago, now, boy, it's already a couple of days, there was a truck. My hair looks weird. My hair looks weird. Ignore that, whatever that is. I look like alfalfa. I don't mean alfalfa. I mean the ancient TV series called The Little Rascals. Alfalfa was a kid with his hair sticking straight up. A couple of days ago, a whole bunch of big rig trucks finally pulled out of Ottawa after they had been sitting there being in the way for a month because they were complaining about something, and they came to Ottawa to make their voices heard. Okay, fair enough. Ottawa is the capital of Canada. That's the place you go to make your voice heard. They made their voices heard, and then they decided to stick around because they figured that if they stayed longer and they got really loud and really obnoxious, that people would sit up and pay attention. It's the squeaky wheel that gets oiled, they said to themselves, and they stuck around. And they stuck around until finally the powers that be said, oh, really? And called in the troops. Not the military, the police, from across Canada. And they didn't roust people. They didn't beat people up. They didn't drag them behind their vehicles. They simply quietly moved them out and said, go to your room. You're done. That's it. They also imposed some fines and penalties and consequences. People whose identities were recognized, the license plates on their trucks and whatnot, for participating in what had become an illegal action, their bank accounts were frozen. This morning on social media, I read about a trucker who had joined the convoy thinking it was a great thing, going to be a party, had a good time, believed in the message, and now he says he's sitting in a field 150 miles from home. His bank account is frozen. He has no way to get there. He has no way to contact anybody. And he has to be home by the end of the month because he has to move out because he can't pay the rent, and he's going to end up living in his van, and he can't afford his meds. Why? Because he thought people he'd never met who said, don't you worry your pretty little head, you'll be reimbursed. And you know what? They didn't do it. And he was left stranded. So, I'm not laying blame on the people who made a promise and didn't deliver. The conversation is about who we choose to be our heroes in the story, who we choose to give away all our power to, and why. The title of my video today is that I don't like the view in the victimhood. Do you? I don't like the view from my window there, where I'm helpless and I'm waiting for someone to rescue me. I don't like that. I want to know what's going on. And in case my white knight has a flat tire and doesn't show up, I need to be able to get out of where I am by myself, because I have things to do, places to go. I know how to do it well, so that when I have to, I'm good at it. Commercial on about some drink, and the voice says fancy, and then the other voice says no, damn fancy. And that's what I want. I want to be damn good at it. I want to be able to rescue myself if the rescuers are busy. And that's a pivot that I have to be willing and able to make. We all have to be willing and able to make. So, how are we able? We practice. We don't leave it to somebody else to do it for us. Because then, when there's a crisis, we're out of luck. And I think the saddest thing about choosing to be helpless, choosing not to care, choosing to do the least work to get where we're going, is that when things get really bad, we're stuck. We have no plan B. There is no one coming at the 11th hour. It's all up to me. And that's terrifying. And the reason I know that is because I was raised in that environment. I grew up thinking, because that was my wiring, that some people are helpless and some people are rescuers. And there's a third category. Some people choose to own it so they can be free. It took me a long time to realize how easy it is to just act and react based on that wiring, based on that first assumption. I grew up, I posted it yesterday, I was raised by Captain America and Blanche Dubois. Blanche Dubois is a character in a play who used to say, "I've always relied on the kindness of strangers." It was the classic victim. "Good morning, Steve. You're late for the party? It's okay. The gang's gathering as they can and when they can. Good to see you." Blanche Dubois, "I've always relied on the kindness of strangers." Okay. She had to be able to do some things herself. She had to have the ability to go in search of those rescuers and give over her power to them because it suited her. This in therapy circles is often called controlling the situation from the one down position. "You're so much braver and stronger, and you have a better education, and I'm just no good at those things." And then what happens if the brave, strong person is sick? What happens if they disappear? Are you just going to sit there in a puddle forever because you're no good at those things? Or are you going to say, "Well, okay, this sucks. Get up, realize your socks are wet, go change your socks and start over"? Are you? Or are you just going to wither away? It's always our call. It took me years and years and years to see that. On the other side, my dad was Captain America. he, he rescued everything. And he made sure that you didn't ask twice, because he was busy rescuing everybody else. One day he said to me when he'd said, okay, let's find you something to do with your life, because I had not been able to stay in the college that I was trying to attend, because they were using old books, and it sounds crazy to say it, but I was overqualified. As I was heading off into the distant future to take my first job, leaving home in Miami at the time and going to New York City, he said, never rescue anyone until they show you that they're willing and able to rescue themselves. I think he spent his whole life learning that, because he married a victim. It allowed him to be a rescuer. It allowed him to be a white man. The thing is, together, those two lovely, beautiful, smart, talented people handed me wiring that made no sense. Because I'm not wired like a victim. Do I look like a victim? No. I'm not wired like a victim. And I'm not really wired like a rescuer. But half of me felt it was my job to compensate. And while I didn't think people were lazy or deliberately avoiding their responsibilities, I was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt that maybe they were just having a bad day. They never learned. They never developed the pivot skills that have kept me alive and well. So in a way, I was part of the crime. I was a contributor to an unfortunate set of circumstances. So today, we're witnessing the opening salvo on something that's going to be ugly. A very big rock got dropped in Eastern Europe yesterday. And the ripple effects are probably tsunami size before the dust settles. And it's important, I think, that we use that not to focus on it and dwell on it and forget about us and ourselves, but use it as an object lesson. See what happens when we don't pay attention. See what happens when we let other people make all the decisions for us. When we give our power away and let someone else do the heavy lifting. Sometimes it works. And sometimes they lift things in a way that doesn't feel right to us. And when we say, no, I didn't mean that, it might be too late. It might be too late. In Ottawa, a decision was not made to set limits on the truckers' visit. Decisions were not made to define the rules. We witness what happened because of that. People with no understanding of their ripple effect on ordinary lives settled in for the long term and liked it. They didn't mind that they were inconveniencing us. Sucks to be you was their thinking. And it did, and we get to own that because we waited too long to stop it before it got away on us. So the pivoting that I want to talk about today is how we fix that, how we prepare. And I think it's helpful to think about it this way. A professional is not always good at what they do. They could have been the one who graduated at the very bottom of the class. But if they have a professional ethic, if they believe that the best they can do is the least we deserve, then the fact that they get paid is another part of the definition of who they are. If professional is defined as wanting to do the best they can and serve the greatest good, then by that kind of definition, amateur is not about people who don't get paid, who do it for love or a hobby or a pastime. The opposite definition of for the greatest good is, you know what, good enough. I cheated on the exam, so what? Yeah. Every time I hear somebody who says, oh yeah, I cheated my way through school. Uh-huh. You don't build bridges, do you? Just checking, because they didn't care. It didn't matter enough. They weren't curious. They weren't hungry. And they had no real interest in anything beyond their immediate gratification. Okay, fair enough. Victimhood is part of the fabric. Fair enough. It doesn't mean we have to accept it. It doesn't mean that we have to say, oh, I'd like to do that. I'd like to be that. And it doesn't mean that because they were lazy, it's their fault when we don't do our due diligence and rely on them. Because if we look at people long enough, if we listen, as Maya Angelou said, people tell you who they are from the beginning. We need to listen. I have ignored that my whole life. I have dismissed it and said, you know what, it's okay. It's okay, they're probably having a bad day. And besides, you know what? I'm good. I can fix it. I can make it better for everyone. It never occurred to me that that wasn't my job. That's not my function. My superpower is not carrying a bunch of people who can't be bothered. That's not why I'm here. So why was I doing that? Invisible wiring. So here's my story. Here's my story, and most of my stories, if you've noticed, most of my stories are examples of me not listening. Examples of me thinking, I can save you, Nell. So it's remarkable that I keep sharing all of these flawed moments in my life. However, at the end of the day, I'm feeling this way. If I show you that joy and peace of mind and an appetite for life is possible when you're flawed, then I'm hoping it gives you the insight that you don't need to wait to get gooder in order to feel great. You can start feeling great today because you're amazing. That's really kind of the underpinning. Also, I think it's pretty funny to tell these stories. So here's the story. Once upon a time, a long time ago, in a far-off land, the king was absent from the castle, and the princess was left alone with the queen And they were driving from Miami up the highways to cross the border to return to Canada, which was their home. And through no fault of her own, the princess, who was at the wheel, got herself caught on a circular ring highway called the Baltimore beltway, which was not built for strangers who don't know where they are. The signage was written by people who've always lived there, and it was meant for people who've always lived there, so the signs made sense for strangers. Kind of random factoids, really, just throwing it out there. And seated beside the princess was the queen, who was holding the map. Because the princess had given the map to the queen, conveniently forgetting one salient fact. The queen had never learned how to drive. The queen didn't like driving. She preferred to have other people drive her. The one time she did get behind the wheel, she said, "I prefer to drive in reverse, because that way people aren't running at me. They're not coming at me." And I said, "No, they're fleeing, screaming, because you're driving in reverse, causing everyone else the utmost damned astonishment." So I had conveniently forgotten that moment when I handed my mother the road map. I had conveniently forgotten that she regarded road trips as a spectator sport. If she wasn't looking out the window and commenting on the things she saw, she was making sandwiches for us on the front seat with a sandwich board and a knife and a jar of stuff. And if you've watched You Can't Do That on Television, there is actually a couple of episodes where Mom does that. They have a car, they're going someplace, and I said to Roger Price, the producer, if I'm going to be sitting in the front seat, I need a sandwich board, and I need bread, and I need condiments, and a knife. And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Because Moms always make sandwiches on road trips." Mine did. And he said, "All right then." So there we are, in the car, on the Baltimore Beltway, beginning to see familiar landmarks, because we've seen them several times. And I said to my sainted mother, "Mom, there's a possibility we can get off at the next sign. Let's pay attention to the sign, okay?" And as the sign approached us, it said, "This way or that way." And I said, "Okay, Mom, okay, look at the map. Which one do I take to get off?" And my mother said, "Well, I don't know, dear. They both look very nice." I swear to God, I said to her, "Mother, you have to pick one, because I can't drive through the middle of the sign. Which one?" And she said, "Well, in the first place, dear, I have no idea. And in the second place, I would thank you to change your tone when you're speaking to your mother." And that would be why we went around the Baltimore Beltway 2 more times. I was not beside myself in frustration. I had moved down the block in frustration. I left finger marks on the steering wheel, and I yelled at my mother, "I'm sorry, but we need direction." And she said, "Well, I don't know why you're asking me." I said, "You're holding the map." And I said, "Well, only," and she said, "Only because you gave it to me." I gave a non-driver who preferred helplessness the tool to set us free. I did that. Yeah. It was way too late for her to change, even if she wanted to. She was who she was. Jeremy, Abby's mom sounds a lot like Valerie Prevert. Well, Jeremy, I wonder how that happened. I had been complicit. I had followed my dad's footsteps. I had learned to be resourceful. I made allowances, stepped in, took care of things when my mother just seemed to be overwhelmed. Always had. Always did. Never realized it. It was just what you do. I had heard my dad say, don't take care of other people who won't take care of themselves. He tried to warn me. I heard him, but it didn't register because the wiring was already set. And the reason I share that story with you is because I'm looking all around me at people who are now regretting giving all their power away, seeing the outcome. And for many of them, it's too late. For many of them, the price is going to be very, very high. It's going to be something they can't pay. And then what? Can they fix it? Can they change? Only when a part of them says, this is not good enough. I'm ready to change. In my last video, I talked about how powerful our subconscious cave brain is. Our cave brain from ancient times is wired to keep us safe inside one cave under the protection of one alpha, part of a tribe. The job is to be the most helpful and the least competitive, to be worthy, to earn the right to be safe. That's the only thing that brain knows. The wiring is old. The good thing is the wiring can change. Do you know how I know that? Here's how I know that. When the cave brain was formed, we didn't drive cars. Today, our cave brains can drive cars when we're on those long highway roads. We can disconnect our thinking brain because the cave brain has figured out how to drive. So the cave brain can be rewired. It takes time. It takes a feeling of safety. It takes positivity. It takes clear intention. It takes the will and the want to get from where we are all the way over to the other side. I just combined three people in that one sentence. That's quite remarkable. We can fix what we're doing badly. If we know we can, if we're not happy with the outcome, if we're willing to put in the work. Or we can look at the world through mom eyes, dear, and everything seems fine. Are you staying for dinner, young man? I'm sorry, I don't believe I caught your name. It's up to us. We can do anything we want to. And we don't have to change. We have the tools wired in. What we do need to do is figure out where they are and roll up our sleeves and practice. We are innately wired to be pivot masters of the galaxy. We're already enrolled. So, as things unfold in the next immediate days, I think it's wise, I know this is what I'm going to try to do, I think it's wise to see the news unfold. Watch the reasons become clear. I know that people are asking why Russia would invade Ukraine. What does that have to do with me? Says the person who's happy to be a spectator. And if you look at the world map, you'll see something very interesting. Ukraine is huge. And it is the buffer zone between Russia and Europe. And the lines on the map aren't unbreachable walls. They weren't even drawn in indelible ink. Life is fluid. Things change. Borders shift. And power is not given to those who don't fight for it. Power goes to those who want to win. That's why it matters. Okay, I'm sorry it's a heavier conversation, but sometimes it's important. Hang on a second. Before we go, I want to read this. Good morning, Gern. Gern has ability to do much more. Gern has just said, I have the ability. I used to do much more. I paid my dues. And now I'm happy to do this. I will wager, Gern, that the reason your boss says what he says is based on how professional you are, no matter what the job is. You can't help yourself. You're a fighter. Okay. It's going to be an interesting weekend. There's going to be a lot of things on the news. The weather hopefully will get better, and we will shift. We will pivot as the days unfold. I have some exciting things to talk to you about next week. When we come back, it will be the 1st of March. And we have all kinds of things, wonderful things planned. So I'm excited about that. And I hope you are too. So, in the meantime, be prepared. Watch the ground for crocodiles and alligators and bogs and, whoa, cliffs. Choose the people you give your power to. Find out if they paid their dues. Why do I say that? Because you're amazing. You're worth it. You're worth all the good things. It's true. Go look in the mirror. You'll see it too. Okay. 3 things. 3 things, as always. When we're done, please like and share this. Please also, as you share, Send your loved ones the link to the YouTube channel, because for me to grow this, for us to do amazing things, I need more subscribers on YouTube. We, together, need more subscribers on YouTube. So that's the first thing. The second thing is be good to you. You're worth it. Don't wait for someone else to be good to you. You do it. You know where all the good stuff is. All right? And the final thing is, hug your loved ones. We never know how long we have them in our lives. Thank you for stopping by.